Everybody, the March 13th, 2012. It's about 7:01. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Kevin, roll call, please.
Mr. Dickerson. Here. Ms. Gerber.
Here.
Mr. Pollock.
Yes, I didn't know whether you said it while I coughed or not, so I thought.
That's why I didn't hear her name, but I know she's here.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Campbell.
I know you're here.
Mr. Thacker. Here. Ms. Elliott.
Here.
All present.
All right, if we could stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to go ahead real quick and read the rules of council for everybody to refresh everyone. All persons that wish to speak shall furnish their names, addresses, and the reason for their appearance prior to being recognized. Said information shall be recorded in the official minutes. No person may be permitted to speak no longer than 3 minutes at one time on one matter. The mayor or his designee shall monitor the time limit. No person may speak more than 2 times on any one subject at any one meeting. No person shall be permitted to speak a second time until all guests that wish to be heard on the same subject have been heard. The mayor may refuse the floor to any persons where the tactics are obviously to become abusive or discourteous and not in the best interest of council. In the event that the mayor determines that a member of the audience becomes too loud, abusive, and or disruptive, that person may be asked to leave council chambers. In the event that the abusive member of the audience refuses to leave or modify his or her behavior, the mayor may direct that an officer of the police department remove said person from the meeting. Rules A, B, and C above may be suspended to permit unlimited debate by an affirmative motion and concurring vote of 3/4 majority of council. With that being said, you've got the minutes in front of you from February 21st. Everybody's had a chance to look over them. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the minutes.
Second. First and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Dickerson.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Ms. Elliott.
Yay.
Adopted 6-0.
The second one is the special meeting minutes from March 9th, 2012. Everybody's had a chance to look those over. Entertain a motion on those minutes.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Dickerson.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Abstain.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Ms. Elliott.
Yay.
Passes 5-0 with 1 abstention.
All right. Next order of business is approval of the bills. Everybody have a copy of the bills? And does anyone have any discussions on the bills?
I have a question.
Sure.
Why are we still buying salt?
We have a contract. We buy it by the year, so we have so much we have to buy. We have to purchase to get that set price. So we're obligated to so much salt, and then after we buy our limit, then we store it for next year. So we buy it. It's like a year in advance to get that good price. So you just gamble.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to accept the bills.
I make a motion we accept the bills.
I'll second.
Any more discussion on the bills? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Mr. Dickerson.
Yay.
Ms. Gerber.
Yay.
Mr. Pollock.
Yay.
Mr. Campbell.
Yay.
Mr. Thacker.
Yay.
Ms. Elliott.
Yay.
Passes 6-0.
All right. Our next order of business is legislation. I'm going to refer and do public input. I think we have some people here who'd like to discuss discuss Resolution 2012-03, the intent to appropriate property to public use. And at this time, if you'd like to come up to the podium, state your name, address, and speak, you're more than welcome.
Thank you. My name is David Robertson. I'm an attorney, and I'm here representing the Parsons, and asking the council to just hold off on this vote for on the appropriation for 2 weeks till the next council session, because we've been trying to do as much due diligence to make sure that you have a fully informed opportunity to make this decision. And due to some of the engineers being out of town and also wanting some additional input from the city since the last time when Mr. Parsons was able to speak, we haven't been able to get all of the due diligence that we think is necessary. What we currently have is a situation where the Kroger's is coming in. I think everybody, including the Parsons, think that that is very important and good for the city, and we all want to see that happen. One of the other things that we're trying to do, as we understand it, is get that light in down by the new subdivision, and that's good. But when it comes to, and I have a bigger PowerPoint of this, but I will. But essentially, right here, that's the street area. And what's happening is we are cutting, Mr. Parsons' lot's right here. We're cutting an additional almost 15 feet out of his lot, which is taking his ability to put cars here out. We certainly know that by the time you get down here where other property holders are on this side of the street, by the time you get down here, you really don't want to cut through the south part over here because it's going to be cumbersome. But we've already talked to this property owner here, and this has already been set to be raised, about the possibility of just shifting this slightly down this direction and starting the cut a little bit beyond where it currently is. Now, we don't have an absolute number on what the cost is going to be, but the best estimate I was able to get was that in order to redraw, it doesn't sound like to any of the engineers or anybody I've been able to talk to that it is a danger to do that. There's no engineering, oh my goodness, it's going to cause a blind spot and kill somebody problem. So it really is a question of economics. And the best I've been able to find is so far, and again, not everybody's been able to weigh in and really kick the tires on this, that it cost an additional about $50,000 to make all of the adjustments necessary to go ahead and move that down. I think we really need to know what it's going to cost before we make a vote, because Mr. Parsons not only sells cars here, but also sells insurance. And in order to keep the ability to sell cars, he's got to have an exclusive 3,500 feet for car sales, and that can't include the portion of the lot that he's using for the sale of insurance. And while we don't have a formal answer yet, it looks like that may cut off his ability to sell cars, not because the lot itself isn't 3,500, but because the part that will be left over that's not being used for the sale of insurance wouldn't qualify. Right now, he grosses roughly about $30,000 a year or so. If you don't have to appropriate any of his property, or move the signs there, or have Duke have to move their poles there, you're going to be saving a tremendous amount of money. And, again, I want full information so that I can have you make the best informed decision possible about what it would cost to come over here, this land over here, which would be most impacted by just slightly cutting through here since this house is already going to be raised. Says he's fine with it. He's not going to ask to be compensated because he's just got mulch there and you could move over into it without damaging him at all. This owner here has no parking across the front and a big chain, so it wouldn't impact his business at all. And by the time you got to this lot, you'd be done with the shift necessary to make it work. And so what we're really saying is, for something that arguably would only save the village maybe $10,000, maybe $20,000, you could be taking away $30,000 in gross income a year from his business. For the next 10 years, that could be impacting him by almost $300,000. I wouldn't want the village to send a message to the other business owners that they wouldn't take the time to really do the due diligence, really kick the tires on this idea, when it's potentially $300,000 to $10,000 or $20,000 in the balance here. And that's the concern that he has. We certainly wouldn't want to see the project shelved, but at this point we don't have any hardcore evidence that waiting 2 weeks, telling the engineers, really kick the tires good on this to make sure we know exactly what it's going to cost us in time and money. We don't have any reason to believe that would derail the entire project. We do have to move fast because I'm aware that you have some time sensitivity on some of the other monies that you're going to be getting to be able to fund this project. And we certainly want to respect that. But even putting a whole bunch of hours into trying to get this research done for you for this meeting, we haven't been able to get all of the information we need from the engineers in order to help you have a full picture of exactly what the balance and trade-off that you're being asked to do. At the very beginning of the meeting, we pledged allegiance, and one of the things we talk about there is liberty. We're talking about the freedom of a private property owner, a business owner here in the village, to be able to continue his business, and the potential risk of him losing the opportunity to do a significant portion of his business. That's what we're weighing here. And so when we really don't know what the impact would be, I think it sends a very, very bad message to the business owners in the community to go ahead and move straight forward on this without saying to the engineer's office, take a second look. Now, very clearly, to take everything down the south side, that's already been very well considered. It's already a bad idea. We don't need to consider that. We already do need to take the majority of this part along the north side because that will be the least impact. So we're not saying we have to reconsider and redo the whole thing. What we're saying is we've got about a 100-foot section right here that everything I can find out so far says that it could be just as easily done on the south side with less impact, virtually no impact to the business owners on the south, where we could cost Mr. Parsons his ability to continue to sell cars on this lot if we do it on the north. I appreciate your time. I have the utmost confidence. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. But I think that's what we're considering. And so we're asking, table this for 2 weeks and let us finish talking with the engineers, finish getting the hard numbers for you so that you know exactly what the stakes are here, and so that we don't rush over and cause a huge detriment to one of the business owners who has faith in you, who's been trying to work with the system, doesn't want to file lawsuits or anything like that, doesn't want to be pushed to that point, doesn't want to fight with anyone, wants to find a win-win. But let's take the time to make sure that we don't kick out a win-win just because we weren't careful enough. We didn't do enough homework. We didn't kick the tires hard enough. That's what we're asking. And with his support of the general project and a real desire to see this go through just in a way that doesn't harm any of the business owners on that stretch of the road. Thank you very much.
Anyone else like to speak on the for or against the intent to appropriate? I've actually got something I'd like to read so people know where I stand on the project. I just want to let you know how I feel about the turning lane for the tall trees and the widening of the road. We looked north and we looked south and came up with the most beneficial plan that would also have the smallest impact on all village residents. This lane will not only benefit village residents, but also commuters who drive through the village every day. I think by making our village a safer place to drive, having less accidents and a better infrastructure is what we need to continue to grow into the future. The opportunity we have in front of us is huge. We need to seize this opportunity and move forward with this project. And that's a statement I would like to make. Does council have any input?
The only question I have is, do we have time to do 3 readings on this or not? Because I know we're under the gun.
Well, I thought that south side had been discussed by the engineers and a few other people invested,
It had all been looked at.
and that's what I thought. I mean, it's not like what's 2 more weeks going to do, other than stall us out and make. Well, it's not going to make anybody happy, but it might make the major player here, which is Kroger's, unhappy. I don't know. Because they're not
make that decision.
they're not a done deal. They could, when you're that big, you can just walk out. And this is a golden opportunity to make, I think, a tremendous asset to the village by opening up Main Street, which, in my opinion, would be the beginning of opening Main Street all the way through and match the road on the other end. Of course, that's down the road a ways, but you got to start someplace. And I don't know. I thought we had discovered or discussed all the ins, outs, and all that sort of thing. And I just can't see 2 more weeks, because I really think if we go 2 more weeks, then we have to notify engineers and Kroger's and the facility, or the people involved in making the groundwork. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, well, we got, I'd venture to say the same thing we got right this very minute. That's my thinking.
Anybody else have any comments?
What? Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, I thought one of the biggest reasons we went south was the utility costs, because there's utilities buried on the south side of the street, and it was.
There's a lot of factors we didn't go south.
Yeah, there's more than just
That's why
what's
we're
there
going
and what's
north.
not there. We're getting telephone poles moved for free, was my understanding, and we'd have to pay at the wazoo to get the utilities all moved.
It's
and
definitely
adjusted.
cheaper to go north.
I know that the road widening and the turning lane has been in the plans for over 10 years. And we also hope that bond money for the turning lane. And I know we're getting near the time frame where we have to use it or lose it. So that's a additional cost there.
Any other comments?
If I could briefly make a short comment. My understanding, as I've been able to talk to all the available people, is that while it was considered to do the whole length on the south side, just doing about 100 feet or so on the south side wasn't specifically considered. And that's basically what we're looking for, is to see. Obviously, there'd be a lot of cost going all the way down. We're not asking for that. We know that that's already been looked at and not a good idea. What we don't know is what the cost would be for just that little section to be taken care of, and that's really what we're asking to be taken a look at. I certainly want you to do that, and I think it's worth tabling for 2 weeks. I don't think that's going to kill the Kroger's deal. Certainly, we aren't saying, the money that needs to get worked on in order to do that turn lane down near Tall Stacks, that is not going to that's not going to change at all, and so, and wouldn't be impacted by what we're doing here. The other alternative that I would ask, if if you're that worried about the turn lane, is to at least still instruct the engineers to figure out what the real cost would be to make just that 100-foot modification. Because as the project goes, there's going to be lots of things that can be done on the other end with a chance of still maybe moving that 100-foot section. If we find out that moving that 100-foot section really isn't going to be as costly or as damaging as we might think. That's the concern. We don't want to give up. We don't want to inadvertently take something that may not cost that much in time and money, and not choose to do it when we and have such tremendous cost on Mr. Parsons if it can be avoided. So even if you go forward today, I'd say go forward with the caveat of having the engineer take a look at it so that we could make that amendment if the time frame allows us to do that. So I certainly think the 2 weeks would be helpful just to consider that one little 100-foot section and the impact on that, because I don't believe we have those numbers. I think we just had the numbers for the whole south side. And then even if we do, I'd ask that going forward, we also ask the engineers to please figure that number out, because between now and 2 weeks from now, if we find out, hey, wait a minute, we actually can do it, it actually is doable, you have the opportunity to amend what's currently on the table as well from a legislative perspective. And that, again, could send a huge message to your businesses that you're willing to go above and beyond and make sure that you don't inadvertently harm them unnecessarily while trying to do the public good. We know you're trying to do the village a great good. We just don't want to unintentionally steamroll over one of the business owners in the process if that doesn't need to happen. Thank you.
I don't think anybody here intentionally is going to do that at all, but, we know how important this project is for us for this road widening. And this road widening with that intersection of tall trees, again, has been looked at for years. There's actually money that was set aside for that, and we have the opportunity now to use it and do it. And I just wouldn't want to lose that opportunity. So, does anyone else have any other?
Yeah, I got a couple of things. I thought you had said you had a general cost, and here's the problem I think that I would have, is where it would be no cost, or, if we could do it the other way, what is the cost to us? $20,000 is a lot of money for the budget that we run in the village. And is that cost effective for us, for him to maintain a car lot and or the insurance? Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, is it going to be cost effective for us to think like that? And I'm going to ask a question I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to anyway, because I want to know. And you can answer, Mr. Parsons can answer. I think my nagging question is, are you doing this for the insurance part? Are we doing this for the car lot part? Because, and I'm not a business owner, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not trying to imply anything. It's a question that I have not only as a person that sits up here, but as somebody who drives by there all the time. I see the cars you have, and I'm thinking, if I need that parking space, those parking spaces for my insurance customers, what are you willing to do on the car part to work with us? Do you understand what I'm saying? When I see 6, 7 cars parked that you're trying to sell out there, but then my problem is you come to us and tell us by taking 15 feet, your insurance people that are coming in to buy insurance can't park there. Well, to my logic mind, that makes no sense to me. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I
We
could,
did figure out.
I could show you, that, well, this actually was when Select Strategies was hounding us.
Right, the
for
one
this,
you
but
showed us before.
They figured, and they said they're gonna kill 8 parking spaces, 4 here, 4 here. It will devastate our insurance office, it will devastate our car lot, it will just devastate us completely. That's why we're doing this. We're saying, please, all you gotta do is slide this down 100 feet, and everybody's good. Across the
Right,
street
and
is just
here's my
mulch.
visual on that, and I get the intent there, but as I visualize how that road goes, if we went to the south side, we're gonna go like this, like how it does now, and kind of back over, and I guess I'm not seeing it visually, going to Facet, and then going down, and then the lane cutting back over, ever how so slightly.
There's a curve in the road. If you
Right.
look that direction, it would actually make it lesser. It would actually improve that instead of cutting over, making it worse, which is what you're proposing now.
And really what he's saying is that there's a natural curve towards the.
Right.
And so really it would just be straightening that part of the road instead of curving it more. It wouldn't, and so what you would have is you would be cutting, if you will, the curve out of
Right.
that stretch of the road so that it would just come almost like, not, this is over exaggerating, but wedging into the road
Correct.
as opposed to beveling out even
Could I
further.
bring this up and just show you something?
Sure.
I mean, if you look at the side, it's gonna be a straight shot.
Right, and like that's what I'm trying to visualize. What?
Maybe you
The
can see
road
that
up
one
here
Yeah.
curves that way if you're looking
Right.
westbound. All we're asking.
And this is Facet.
Yes, and this is us. All we're saying is that instead of sliding in here, just come down here and do it. And this is all mulch. They
Right.
don't need or use that for parking.
Yeah, this is my. I don't know if any, but my concern then would be where it's going to end up from here to Facet. Okay, I get that it would come through here, but then it's going to have to cut back
Gonna have to cut
again.
back.
Well, no,
Yeah.
it would actually just, it would be just like this, but slid down here, the same thing, which would actually help the curve that if you look westbound, you see a big hook in the
Which we don't
road.
want to create.
Right.
Would actually draw this
Just draw on here. Because what we're actually talking about is leaving this the way it is. And
For
then-
how long? So that's my question.
Okay, it's,
Our lot is not 100 feet.
Right.
and actually, this actually does stay up
If they
here.
actually redrew it, said that stays straight all the way
This is
through.
gonna stay straight all the way through here. But by staying straight through there, this staying straight through here, what we're really doing is saying just shift this back so that this cut starts here and comes up right about there. And so it really just takes the shape of this road and just moves it back about 100 feet, which would finish it, and you'd be right up at this point instead of and
Right.
all you've done is
Instead of
shift
coming
it, all you've done is shift it back slightly. And then what that does is it takes this and it just brings this straight. Boy, nothing looks right
Yeah.
on this. It just brings it. It's like cutting this straight right through there. So it doesn't really do much but cut the hump out of this section.
But the widening starts here at Lori Lane, not at the beginning of Mr. Parsons' property.
Actually, the widening starts right about there with the drawings.
It'll start right.
So we'll start right here.
It'll be a straight shot from there.
So it goes straight. It'll be like that. Okay.
Right, and and then on the drawings that we've seen, what we're just doing is shifting it back and cutting the bulge out of this.
Right.
And all that does is impact this area right in here. which he said he doesn't care and he doesn't use and hasn't objected to it.
Thank you.
Mr. Parson, you considered moving back on your own property?
Well, I was trying originally, well, when Select Strategies was trying to work this deal with us, they were trying to, in fact, this is their drawing that they had an engineer do. They had Thomas Graham and Associates draw up a proposal where they bought some land from Nuri's, and I was like, okay, if I could widen out and come back, sure. And I said I would do this. I agreed to this deal. Then they went to Nuri's, and Nuri says no, they don't want to let go of any width. They didn't want to sell. So then I was in the process of negotiating with Select Strategies, who was going to try to buy some land behind me off the Donnerbergs. When, like I told you at that last meeting I was at, that was in the works, and then all of a sudden, Brian Neltner from Select Strategies called me up and he says, well, Johnny, I got some news for you. We're out of the game. And I said, what do you mean you're out of the game? He says, we don't have to deal with you at all. We're going to get the land now on a freebie on the eminent domain thing from the town. And I said, what are you talking about? We're in the middle of this negotiation. He says, well, negotiations with us are done. So then I hired a lawyer, and we've been trying to buy some land in the back, but they have mortgages, and they can only do this and can only do that.
Right,
And
the landowner back here, which we tried to back in order to move everything back, he'd be more than happy to do it, but his mortgage is out of an insurance company in California that just won't allow him to do anything with that, effectively preventing us from being able to acquire that land. So we really tried to do that. The Donnenbergs, we talked about maybe being able to acquire some of this land, and they said that they can't do that because they need to be able to move cars in and out of here. And and then the other problem with this is that because there's just enough room, there's not a lot of room to park cars in here. And so even if he were to move all his cars back there, people would need X-ray vision in order to see through the buildings, in order to notice the cars that are for sale, because there wouldn't be room to put the cars that are for sale on the road where it could be seen. So we have two problems. One, the neighbors are either unwilling or unable to convey property to him to push everything back, and there wouldn't be enough frontage left. We've even talked about the idea of even if it could only be shortened partially so that it didn't go quite as deep, quite as fast, that would still give him room to be able to put some cars out front, which is another thing we'd love to kick around with the engineers if we could get the village's thumbs up to be able to do that, because it could be that maybe just moving it 25 feet or 50 feet might be able to create a win-win that's kind of good enough. But we really need the opportunity to kick that around with the engineers and really see what it's going to cost so that we can help you make a really informed decision, because he's not saying he wants to block it. He's just saying, see if we can salvage some of the front of my yard so that I can still put those cars out and so I don't endanger the opportunity to lose his license.
But he can only put them cars on that corner, right? Otherwise, he's putting them in front of his insurance business. And
That's
that
right.
would be, which, right now, the spot he's got just to put cars is very, very small anyway.
What's the requirement for used car lot?
3,500.
3,500. How much you got in the front there?
It's pretty close. The last time they met, see, another thing is, I don't know exactly, but we're barely at the limit, and because the last summer when they just did this other project, and we entered into an agreement, and I still have the agreement that says real estate taken will be none, which I've showed that to Todd. Then they came in 5 feet on me, and I said, what are you doing coming in 5 feet? We got an agreement, you didn't come in any feet. And they said, oh, well, they should have told you that we have 5 feet of an easement or something or other right of way. I said, well, nobody told me that. And he said, oh, well, too bad, too sad. So we already lost 5 feet there. Now we're talking about losing maybe another 15.
if you could just hold off for just a little bit, if we could just work this out, it would really be beneficial, and it would be, I mean, this is enormously important to us. I mean, if it goes like it is gonna just kill us. There's no two ways around it. It will crush our business, it will crush our livelihood, and it can be avoided.
Is that 3,600 feet in the used car lot itself, or is that taken in the insurance building?
That's exclusive to the used car lot.
You have this requirement right here from the state of Ohio. It's what they require, 3,500 square
Yeah.
feet.
And it's permeable surface,
exclusive.
right?
Exclusive.
Permeable surface.
Yeah. And we were okay till they took the other 5 feet last summer when they just did this other project. And, here last summer they promised, don't worry, Johnny, you won't see us for 20 or 30 years. We did extensive studies. This road's done for 20 or 30 years. Now we're not even a year later, and here we are again. And I'm begging you to please consider this.
Well, I'm saying that your 3,500 feet, that's excluding your insurance property.
Right.
And how big is your insurance property?
I don't have the score.
You got a requirement for that?
No. There's no actual requirement, but as Todd knows, he's parked there. It's tight now. And like I said, if they do this just like it's drawn, it's going to chop 8 parking spaces, 4 across the front. We'll kill them and 4 over on the side. That's going to kill 8 parking spaces. I mean, it will be devastating.
But you could still go to the back. You have a big back lot that's permeable surface.
Not big, and it's full.
It's concrete and blacktop.
But how are people supposed to see the cars if they're in the back of the building?
Why couldn't?
I'm not really sure, in the front of your building, if you exclude your insurance business, it's kind of questionable in that little corner lot that you even have 3,500 feet unless you include your insurance business right now.
The state has inspected, after they did the last 5-foot chop off, they had re-inspected it, and he said, man, you just barely under, or over the footage,
For clarity's sake, they do include that back area in measuring that footage.
If they include that, you're well over 3,500 square feet, close to 9,000 square feet, if they included that. Because we looked over, when we were checking to make sure, looking at all angles to go, we did lot size on everybody's property for surfaces, and yours came up to about 9,600 square feet of non-building surface.
But not in front of the.
No, but you said they include the back when they include it all for his surface, is what you just said, so that would be the
Well,
overall surface.
No, actually, because it's not paved, and I was in error.
It's gravel in the back.
Right, but it's permeable, that is considered the same as long as it's blacktop gravel or concrete.
Could you read us the rest of the requirements?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. It says,
Just start at the beginning, if you would.
yeah. Okay. A used motor vehicle dealership must have and maintain the following minimum physical characteristics to receive and maintain a license. Use the following checklist to compare your characteristics to the established place of business. Your proposed location must be easily accessible from the public roadway as a motor vehicle dealership. A display lot of at least 3,500 square feet, not including the driveways, with adequate ground cover of a hard surface, gravel or concrete, etc., to prevent the collection of dust, mud, water, and other unsightly conditions. The display lot must be separate from any other business or residence with a permanent physical barrier that is sufficient to deter normal vehicular and pedestrian traffic. The barrier may not be able to be moved or removed. The permanent office of at least 180 square feet of usable office area located on the display lot, which shall be kept in a neat and orderly fashion, must include the following: a desk, 3 chairs, filing cabinet, telephone service, electric light sufficient for an office, and heating surface of an office. The office shall not be permitted to be used for a storage or other utility area. A permanent sign showing the exact name of the business, including any registration or trade names, prominently displayed and properly maintained. The lettering on the sign must be at least 6 inches high. The business hours must be prominently displayed. The business must be open and attended during the posted business hours by the owner, a partner, president of the corporation, member of the limited liability company, trustee of a business trust, or licensed salesperson. The dealership shall be used and identified exclusively for the purpose of offering sale and displaying for sale the dealings in motor vehicles. The above requirements must be met in order to obtain a license and maintain for the entire period of which the license is held, or the application will be denied, or the license suspended or revoked. Read Ohio Revised and Administrative Code chapters 4517 and 4501:1 through 3 for additional provisions that may affect the application and license. See additional information. And yeah, where the key problem he suffers from is that the display lot, which has to be on display, has the 3,500 feet requirement, and that back area that's gravelled and that's fenced in can't be considered a display lot because you can't see it from the road. You can't, in order to access it, it would be problematic.
One thing you read was physical barrier. What do they mean by the physical barrier?
I think it's talking about right here where he's got a fence that keeps it from pedestrian traffic being able to walk directly into here. There's also, I believe, a barrier on this side as well where he's got signs posted.
I took that legal barrier to be between the two buildings, between the car lot and the insurance company, which is run north and south. Isn't that right? You can't have a fence across the back end of it. You haven't separated anything.
Are you talking about this fence right here?
Yeah.
When the
that blocks
regular-
off his back lot.
Sure. That is something I'd certainly be prepared to address more further at the next meeting, but I do know that when he was inspected, they felt like the circumstances were sufficient, and that he's in compliance at this time.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Mr. Parsons. If you're selling vehicles as well as auto insurance, looking at this aerial here, what is this back portion even being used for that you have fenced on?
Cars that are in disrepair, that need fixed up, cars that need restored, parts cars, things of that nature.
Because that's a large percentage of your property there in the back, on top of this huge garage that you have there. Are you doing repairs as well?
Well, not for the public, just on the cars we have.
Because that's consuming a huge percentage of your parking space, or just overall property. And then there's this other object here in the front. It's an
Carport.
carport.
Yeah.
How many parking
sell
spaces
those.
is that taking up?
Well, really
It's not
doesn't
taking
take any because we can park cars under it, which we actually do. It's owned by American Steel. They just display it, and we sell those occasionally. It doesn't actually eat up any parking spaces because we can just park 2 cars under it, and it stands there.
You're running 3 businesses?
Well, the carports, it's kind of an incidental thing. We might sell a couple carports every 3 or 4 months. I mean, very few.
If that.
Well, getting back to the barrier, there is no barrier between your used car lot and your insurance business that I can ascertain.
Well, there's no wall or anything, but the state has inspected it a few times, and I always pass, and I don't know what kind of leniency they have or what they mean by a barrier, but it passes inspection every time.
Do you have 2 separate offices in that building for insurance?
Car lot office in the back, insurance office in the front.
The upstairs being used at all?
That's an apartment.
Okay. So you have like a fourth business going on there, in other words.
You wanna call it
Rental property.
business,